Coming up, a harmonious conclusion to the coaching staff conundrum for Big Blue. We dive in on the updated status for one Mike Kafka, the filled out staff overall, and then, of course, where do we stand on Saquon Barkley? Is he committed to the Giants? Is he committed to money? We'll break that down and also give our predictions for the big game. All coming up next. Yes, my friends, it is OGP, the one giant podcast where you know that we are your host. Over here, Adam Armbrecht. Over there, Andy Makowitz, healthy, wealthy, and wise, and returning from a little bit of a respite. Andrew, how are we, sir, before we dive in?
Feels good. Took a little bit of time away. Got to be with the family, obscure, cell phone down at the beach. It was very, very nice. And I'm appreciative for anyone that's watching on YouTube. I really like that we picked out the red shirts to match like the Kansas City and the San Francisco 49ers red. It feels very appropriate given what's going to be happening this Sunday.
We coordinate like crazy on this show. It's a big part of who we are as individuals and as a collective on OGP. Before we dive in, we let you know today's episode is brought to you by Personam. You know that Personam is an AI-driven cyber threat detection engine. Personam improves your vision into your network security environment and allows you to see cyber threats that other tools and platforms just can't do. Go check out Personam today because they are always vigilant and always learning. And the other thing that we're learning, Andy, is that sometimes what it ultimately comes down to is just taking a little bit of time. Everyone have a deep breath. Maybe you go on a couple of dates, right? You go to a couple happy hours, you put your toes in the water, and ultimately you find out that maybe everybody at the bar wants to take somebody else home. Mike Kafka had interviews with the Seattle Seahawks for their head coaching position. They ultimately go in a different direction, but immediately come back and say, but how about as the offensive coordinator, that lateral move that some Giants fans were concerned about? The response to this from the Giants, from Brian Daboll, is to give Mike Kafka an elevated role, put him in as the assistant head coach, and we think in theory, give him true, uninterrupted control of the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, uninterrupted, except maybe just not calling the plays for the team. Like, how interrupted is that?
I won't interrupt you after I tell you the play that I want you to tell our quarterback to call. Yeah, that sounds about right?
Yeah, it does. And listen, yes, it feels like after the Giants blocked Mike Kafka's lateral request from the Seattle Seahawks to interview for their offensive coordinator position, it was kind of coming to a head where they needed to figure all of this out. You may be taking play calling away, play calling abilities away from me. That's not really what I signed up for when I came here. My job is changing, so why don't you let me go? If you're not going to let me go, then what are you doing to make sure that I'm happy here? It
Sure.
seems like this is what we've figured out as the happy median, which is add assistant/associate head coach to Mike Kafka's label. It's still to be determined whether or not he's going to call plays, but just seeing Mike Kafka get head coaching interview requests from around the league, other teams wanting his mind as the offensive coordinator, it shows how valuable he is viewed around the league. Obviously, was just the head coach at the Senior Bowl. So, like, the league as a whole really appreciates what Mike Kafka does, and the Giants are trying to show him that they also do it, even though they may still take play calling abilities away from him.
Right. So real quick, do you is this all just window dressing for the New York Football Giants? And if so, why not just I know why not, but then go be the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. Like, why do this dance, right? Because we know we went through the Wink Martindale saga. We understand that it looks like Brian Daboll needs to acknowledge in some level here, okay, Wink Martindale, total mess. We butted heads. He was wrong. Awful stuff. Great. But now you got another guy in Mike Kafka who seems to be a well-regarded head coach, seems to be a sought-after talent around the league, and there's still the same butting of heads. Like, I'm optimistic that if you're giving him this title, it ends up being more than window dressing. Because if you're Mike Kafka, there has to be a world where when you come back from these interviews, you say, hey, listen, guys, I obviously have opportunities. Okay, I didn't get a head coaching offer just yet, but it's coming for me. And I do not want to go down the Wink Martindale road here at some point over the course of this season. So we need to have some understanding. Do you think Brian Daboll came to at least a little bit of a realization of maybe I was a little bit over controlling in terms of all the aspects that I want to have my hands on. At some point, grind and grind and grind throughout the week, and then trust my offensive coordinator to have his input, to have his hands on our operation during the game day and not get in the middle of it.
I know people are not going to want to hear this. It's probably going to be something where people will roll their eyes.
Okay.
But if all the reports that Joe Shane and Brian Dable still believe that Daniel Jones is their starting quarterback when healthy, giving him the best opportunity to succeed is giving him some consistency and not making him have to go through Pat Shermer, Joe Judge, Jason Garrett, Mike Kafka successful, and then all of a sudden he's out, and now he's got to learn a new system after coming off a knee injury. Like,
Sure.
if you actually believe that the Giants want to get the most out of Daniel Jones and they still believe that he can be the starter, then having Mike Kafka stay is the most important thing that you can do for Daniel Jones.
How about this, right? Okay, ready? I'll even go a layer deeper because people will roll their eyes at that. Let me have you roll your eyes again. This will be the next step. You want the Giants to draft a rookie quarterback, right? That's what you want the direction for them to go in. How about they're not going to do that this year? But Mike Kafka is likely to end up maybe landing a head coaching job next offseason. And then Brian Dable will fully implement how he wants to groom his rookie quarterback a year later. So go ahead, Daniel Jones. Stay within the system, right? Consistency. We won't bother turning the page yet because we want our rookie quarterback to learn in what will be probably a similar but slightly modified system with a new offensive coordinator a year from now. I'll tie it in and make it even worse for Giants fans.
Yeah, that's the doomsday scenario
That's
that I
right.
think people are worried about. I mean, don't discount the fact of how well regarded Mike Kafka is and how
Yeah,
even through all this adversity, you haven't heard one peep from him
100%.
being critical. You haven't heard things come out through the media. He's been very good about it. Don't be surprised. Like, the Giants head coaching position seems to be a little bit warm right now, and it's
Oh,
like
oh,
at
oh,
some
oh.
point maybe they want to have some consistency and continuity in house to say if we do have to make a change at some point, maybe Mike Kafka is the guy that ends up being the head coach in New York.
Joseph Shane bids a fond farewell to his own man and says, Mike Kafka, come on down. A conversation maybe for another day. One little footnote here. I know Andy likes to do this. He's petty. He likes to throw shade. Wink Martindale will be coaching in the upcoming season. However, it may not be at the NFL level.
Oh, wait, are you sure? I thought he was going to Detroit, right?
Nope.
He's
No, missed out on. Yeah,
I
no, didn't work out. No.
No, I saw he was the defensive coordinator in
He will
Michigan,
be.
right?
Yeah, he
So,
will be in
but the
Michigan. Yeah.
Lions are the only NFL team that plays in Michigan, I
That's
think,
right.
right?
That's right. Yeah. And he thought about doing it for the Detroit Tigers, but it turns out that was baseball. So it didn't pan out for him there.
So he's going to the University of Michigan as the defensive coordinator. Is
Yeah,
that
lock
what
it
I'm
up,
understanding?
baby. Do
I
you
mean,
Yeah, how
Adam,
does it hit for
listen,
you?
I, this will be closing the chapter officially on the Wink Martindale situation, but
Perfect.
talk about feeling like he overplayed his hand a little bit, right? Like, he almost kind of pushed all his chips in and forced the Giants to make a decision one way or another on what they were going to do, what they were going to allow him to do, how much responsibility he could have. And he thought his safety net was, well, clearly I can interview for other head coaching positions in the NFL. Clearly there's a nice cushy landing spot as the defensive coordinator in Jacksonville. And it feels like it all evaporated. And, a lot of the Giants beat writers are kind of throwing dirt on Wink Martindale's grave right now, basically saying he
Yeah.
clearly overplayed his hand. They want to make sure that the Giants organization is happy. But outside of them, like, this has to feel like Wink completely misread exactly what his options were, because like he was scheduled to make 3.25 million, and like the defensive coordinator Jesse Minter of the University of Michigan last year made about 1.5. So he's going to be taking a pay cut to go to college to teach college kids. Like, to me, it just feels like this was not what he had scripted as his end game when he went in basically saying, this is what I need or else.
Yeah, yes, I doubt this is how he thought it was going to go down. Remember, he got coaching interviews a year ago as well, right? So he probably thought he was at a certain status. The one thing I'll say, if I want to give Wink Martindale a little bit of an out here, and maybe likewise for the Giants and everybody involved, is he didn't want to be here, Right? Either way, he did not want to stay on the Giants coaching staff. So whether or not you think you have options at the NFL level, if it looks a little bit brighter than it's going to be, at the end of the day, he probably was saying, either way, I'm not going to coach here. I can't coach with Brian Daboll. We don't get along. Brian Daboll didn't want him to be there. The Giants organization didn't want him to be there, right? So in the end, it was, hey, I got to go to market. And what he probably, if you want to say from a PR perspective, Brian Daboll wasn't going anywhere anyway, so he looks better in this. Mike Kafka stays, so it looks a little bit better. So now in the PR battle, Wink Martindale ends up looking like, so what we're getting here is that you're a really difficult guy to work with. The team, the defensive unit can be successful, but there's probably a threshold there. And we said this at the time. You go back and you look at the rankings for the defensive side of the ball. It's not like he was a top 10, top 15 across the board. There are some really nice things that he does defensively, but I don't think if you're a head coach around the NFL, you're looking at Wink Martindale and saying, oh, here we go. He's the missing piece. You're probably looking at a lot of options and feeling pretty good about several possibilities as opposed to locked into this vet.
One last thing. If you have your tinfoil hat on, I saw Art Stapleton, beat writer for the New York Giants, was responding to someone and said, maybe you're not far off in your assumptions, but someone had mentioned on social media, they basically said, when all this stuff came out about Wink Martindale from Jay Glazer, the Giants were 3-8. Do you think that Wink Martindale was planting the seeds of dysfunction and combustibility, that if the Giants continued to lose games and went 1-5, 1-6, whatever to finish the season, that there would have been enough pressure and the organization as a whole, New York Giants liked Wink Martindale enough where he could force the hand and say, I've got head coaching positions. The defense is the only thing keeping this thing afloat. Maybe I'm the guy that should be taking over here. And then the Giants ended up cobbling a few wins together to kind of salvage it. And at that point, he tried to push all the chips in and it didn't really work out. That's a theory that's going on there. Like, did he have enough clout in the organization that if they didn't win another game and they finished 3-14, like, could it have been, a coach of the year for Brian Daboll, then out the next season and Wink Martindale replaces him?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, I guess. I think there was enough on the offensive side. Daniel Jones injury, right? A lot of things happening there. Offensive line play where you're not going to put that at the feet of the head coach. Yes, the defensive unit played well, certainly over that stretch, but I think that's way too hard of a needle to thread if you're Wink Martindale. Now, I need this team to lose games, but I also need to show that I'm a good coach and the players like me. So I need my unit to play well, but I need us to lose games. And there was a time when that was sort of happening. But I just think that'd be way too tricky. And I'll level with you. I don't think Wink Martindale, if he's trying to play eighth dimensional chess here, maybe that's how he ended up coaching defense in the state of Michigan. Nevertheless, we close the chapter on him. Don't want to spend too much time. And now we turn our attention over to a current Giant in Saquon Barkley. Before we do that, though, my friends, you heard me talk about these guys earlier in the week. And that's our friends over at Manscaped. Not only because Valentine's Day is coming up, but you also know that it is time for the ultimate face-off. The Beard Bowl is here. And as the two best teams square off on Sunday, Kansas City Chiefs, you got the San Francisco 49ers. We also have to find out who the championship of the facial fuzz is. Our friends over at Manscaped are prepping everything you need for game day. Manscaped's Beard Hedger Pro Kit is the MVP of facial grooming. You can see I'm working on it. A little late in the winter season to do so, but this offers precision trimming, water-resistant technology, and enough styling options to outplay any opponent. And guess what? You can join the winning team along with over 10 million men who already trust Manscaped with our special offer by going to manscaped.com. Use promo code OGP24 for 20% off and free shipping. Craft your winning look with Manscaped. I said, I am going to have a luxurious beard in a matter of moments, seconds away from now. And he has a very tight but well-maintained beard. It's why you want to get over and use all of these products, including the Beard Hedger cordless trimmer, which packs one guard with 20 different lengths. So if you want to be nice and tight, you want to be big and bushy, you got all the options right there for you. No more messy drawers full of guards, just one simple use. And lastly, as a bonus, Manscaped has thrown in a beard accessory pack, beard brush, beard comb, and beard scissors for the finishing touches every modern gentleman needs and deserves. That playoff beard has never looked better. Trust Manscaped and get the job done. Get 20% off when you go to manscaped.com and use our exclusive promo code OGP24. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com with our promo code OGP24. Gear up for the real halftime show where the beard takes center stage. Oh, Andy, what a journey we've been on here when we talk about the New York Football Giants and talk about looking good. A guy that always looks good on the field, off the field, in the locker room, in front of the microphones, Saquon Barkley. He has continued. He went on a bit of an interview tour this week, continues to be comfortable with the narrative. I love the Giants. I want to remain a Giant. And I'd also like a long-term contract and not to be franchise tagged. Where do we stand right now?
Yeah, I mean, Saquon continues to say all the things that he's supposed to say. He has a very delicate way that he needs to thread the needle. And this offseason, he needs to talk about how much he really wants to play for the Giants while also not putting all his chips in the Giants basket and not being able to explore other options to get the right amount of money. So you hear him coming out saying, I love the organization top to bottom, their class. I've been fortunate enough to be drafted in the right place. I want
Super
to be,
classy.
people like Eli Manning and Tiki Barber that spend their entire careers here. I love it. I want to be a Giant for life. And then you have the phase two, which is, but if things don't work out, I am ready. Another team's going to get a guy that's gritty, ready to fight. All of the different things that make Saquon Barkley great. He kind of talks about it. So he kind of, acknowledges that there may need to be life after the Giants. Does anything change? What is the Saquon Barkley tour right now mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, this is, you're standing at the altar saying, baby, I'm ready to commit. Now, also, just to be clear, maid of honor, if it doesn't work out over here, I think you and I could be a winning ticket. Like, this is what you have to do. I'll make it very clear. I love Saquon Barkley. He's an excellent player. He's the perfect face of a franchise. Like, there are all the things and reasons why you want to keep him in a Giants uniform. And also, there's the business side of it. I heard this ESPN radio, they're talking about on their drive time show this week saying, how could you not use your 12.5 million franchise tag? Of course, who else are you going to spend the tag on? You have to keep him around. What's your other option going to be? And again, you're not going to replace Barkley 1-to-1, but we know 12.5 million, that's locked in money. You don't get to spread that out over multiple years. It's not about using the franchise tag on another player like Xavier McKinney. As we've said, $17.5 million. That's not going to be an option for them. The reality is that the Giants have $40 million-ish in cap room and some other decisions that they can make. And to go ahead and occupy a third of that or a quarter of that in a running back position when you know you have needs on offensive line, needs at linebacker, needs at cornerback, maybe needs at wide receiver, depending on if you go draft or not, right? Like, there's just so many variables that you need to address here. The real question for me is Saquon Barkley willing to have a discussion about what a 3-year deal looks like, how the money gets guaranteed, and realizing what the market is? Or does he just want to get the biggest dollar amount? And I think for me, understandably, and I agree with him, his hierarchy is I want the payday. I deserve the payday. I have ground my body into pulp here while this team has been awful. I want to get paid. And if it's going to be somewhere else, so be it. I do not think that the part of him that wants to stay a Giant, which is true, outweighs what he believes is a disrespectful couple of years here where he has not been rewarded with a long-term contract from the team that drafted him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Saquon has wanted to know what his value is in free agency. And of course, agents are not allowed to talk to other teams while players are under
Buddy,
contract. So
nobody's
how
having
could
a
he possibly
conversation.
know
No.
what another team would pay
No.
him annually or on a multi-year deal? Like you have to wait until the clock strikes midnight when you're a free agent to be able to start talking. So I'm
Of
sure
course.
there's been no back channeling. But Adam, the tough part to me is this. Saquon Barkley believes he is worth a certain amount of money.
That's right.
And either he thinks because this is what NFL running backs have been paid previously, that that's what he's worth, or he's had some other teams or some other organizations tell him, like, if you were a free agent, we would pay you $15 million a year because we have the cap space, right?
Sure.
So, like, either he's saying it because of historical information or he's saying it because he knows another team is willing to pay him. I
Right.
think everyone has talked about the same thing, which is it doesn't feel like the Giants are going to use the franchise tag. I don't think it makes much sense for anyone for him to use the franchise tag. If it locks in at $12.5 million, it makes him upset. It doesn't really help the Giants because they want to use that cap space to get better. Honestly, listen, there's teams out there like the Houston Texans. Houston Texans right now have $57 million in cap space and can free more of that cap space up. they have a quarterback on a rookie deal. They could pay Saquon Barkley $14 million over annually on a 3 or 4 year deal and guarantee the first 2 years, and Saquon Barkley would get paid significantly more than what I think the Giants are willing to pay him. And though that reality is something that is going to be difficult. What I think the Giants have to turn around and say is, go check out what your market value is, and if you truly want to be here, give us an opportunity to match. And if we can't match it, then you can go on your way and take the money. But if you really want to be here and we have found out exactly what your market value is, then give us an opportunity to be there.
Here's the other part of it for me too. You mentioned the Houston Texans. They're going to come in right now per spot track, at least by these projections. So there could be some adjustments that need to get made here and maybe some obvious moves that teams are going to make. But they're coming in with $63 million in cap space, all in. The fourth place team, that's fifth overall. The Colts, $61 million. I don't know why they're out of order like that. That's weird. $67 million for the New England Patriots, $72 million for the Tennessee Titans. Top of this list, Washington Commanders, $83 million in cap room based on what they have. So there's a two-part here. One, I think you're right. Go to the market, give us the opportunity to match. We talked about this before. Jordan Renan, he said on Twitter here that like the way that his quotes were being a little bit misconstrued in terms of ultimately this could lead to a parting of ways, and this could be building towards an exit for Saquon Barkley via free agency. Speaking to the path that you're talking about, hey, go out, let the market dictate, and then it's kind of an easy out for both sides. Saquon Barkley gets to say, wow, what an offer that Team X gave me. And the Giants say, we of course we love Saquon, but we obviously can't afford to match an offer like that. If the Washington Commanders come knocking down the door, and there's been talk about maybe the Dallas Cowboys would be interested too, but if the Washington Commanders, if it's an in-division team, where would you stand on that part of it where the Giants say, we can't afford to pay you, but there's potentially a team that you're going to see twice a year for the next 2 to 3 years, and Saquon Barkley staring in the face? Does that bother you at all? Does it concern you at all? Or would that be short-sighted by the Giants to cut off their nose despite their face within the division?
Listen, the same thing happened with former Giant Landon Collins. It felt like he was the heart and soul of the Giants. He
That's
ended
true.
up hitting
That's a good
free
one.
agency. He said he wanted to be a Giant, and he took the bag from the
Yeah.
Washington Commanders. And it didn't really work out in Washington for him. It probably worked out better for the Giants. Landon got paid, but ultimately it worked out better for the Giants where they were able to kind of reset the money there. You can't dictate once you allow a player to go get the most money, you can't really dictate whether it's going to be in the division or not. Look
Right.
at James Bradbury, who ended up getting released from the Giants and then ultimately signed with the Philadelphia Eagles to try to run and take a run for the Super Bowl. These things will happen. You can't really have that knee-jerk reaction. The Commanders have all the cap space in the world to be able to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brian Robinson is probably good enough for them in terms of being able to address other areas of need that they probably have. But yeah, look, that's going to be the reality. If you don't franchise tag him, you open yourself up to him going anywhere, and anywhere could technically be in the division. So, Adam, my question to you on Saquon Barkley is, your GM, Joe Shane,
That's
you
right.
want to be able to offer Saquon Barkley a reasonable contract to stay with the Giants, knowing that
Mhm.
he wants to be here, knowing that we don't really have an internal person to back up Saquon that can replace him immediately and get relative production from him. What is the contract that you slide across the table and say, here you go, Saquon. Here is the good faith offer from the Giants. We want you here. What is that number and how many years?
Uh, I offer him, and they did a little bit like this last year, a 3-year, 3-year, $32 million contract, something like 20 million fully guaranteed, maybe. And if you wanted to throw in some season and playoff incentives, right? So if over 3 years you want to end up converting this into, that's even a little bit high, but 36 million, right? The 37 million, where he ends up averaging 13 to 13 and a half million a year. Like, I'm willing to go to that number. All the way up to close to 40 ends up being the guaranteed money if it all goes right. Understanding 2 years from now, you could have $20 million. Thanks so much. And I think that that's both really reasonable from the Giants, and I don't think that Saquon Barkley would take that offer. Like, I think that he would want to be fully locked in all 3 years, guaranteed to be on the roster. No way could he be moved on from without punitive damages to the cap for the Giants, right?
Yeah, listen, I am very, very close to where you are. I think 3 years for 30 million feels like the number where it's like no other running back on the open market, even last year or this year, is projected to get more than 10 million on a multi-year deal. So you're almost negotiating against yourself, giving him more because you want him and he wants to stay there. It doesn't really make much sense. Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post was talking about Saquon and going back and forth. And we asked him on X, Twitter, what do you think the number is to get things done? Is it 3 for 30 with 21 million guaranteed? That feels like, guarantee a little bit of the third year to sweeten the pot. And he said, he's like, that is the big unknown question right now of what he's willing to take, because that was the similar offer to what the Giants did last year. And it was about $23 million of guaranteed money. The Giants refused to come up from that, and Saquon walked away as a result. Now, the market has shrunk since then, but Saquon Barkley still values himself relatively high. Has the chasm gotten bigger from where the Giants are to what Saquon, is asking for? If it is, there might just be one offer, and then everyone just decides to walk away from this thing.
And that's the other interesting part of this, right? Because we're talking about, okay, 3 years, 30 million, X guaranteed, okay. But a year ago, the market was a little bit stronger potentially, and it's why the Giants went with the tag. Now the tag is more expensive at 120% of the rate. Now the running back market is even a little bit lower potentially right now. So if you're the Giants, and we know how Joe Shane, he's basically said, I'm pretty black and white when it comes to this stuff. I'm not going to bid against myself. I'm not going to overpay. Right? I'm going to be somewhat cutthroat about this. If he sees that the market's even lower, he might be saying, yeah, we'd love to have you back. And by the way, we will give you 3 years. You're locked in for all 3, averaging $8.5 million a year, right? It's 26 million. And it's going to be a hard pill for Saquon to swallow. And one thing I will say, I'll be disappointed. It will be a sad state of affairs if Saquon Barkley ends up playing somewhere else next season and it ends up being for under 9 million. You know what I mean? Where it's just, listen, you guys didn't make me the good faith offer. I'm going to go test the market. Giants say, give us a chance to match. He says, no, you don't get a chance to match, because I do feel insulted. You drafted me 2nd overall. I've done everything right by the organization. I've played through injuries. I've been hurt, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I'm going to end up taking whatever the money is. You could offer me $1 million extra, and I actually don't care at this point. I could see that being a likely part of this outcome here too.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say on this, I think we're both aligned that a 3-year deal for 10 million-ish plus makes sense. But I don't think Saquon Barkley accepts that, because he's like, the bidding starts at 12 point whatever the franchise tag is on a multi-year deal.
Right.
I feel like I will be disappointed if it's anything under what the franchise tag is on an annual basis. So let's say it's 11 million per year on a 3-year deal for 33 million, and he takes that somewhere else. It would feel like the Giants should have been able to bridge that gap. But to your point, if it's 14 million annually with someone else, or 15 million annually where someone is going to pay him top of the line money, then it's best for the Giants and Saquon Barkley to go their separate ways.
Of course, before now we get into the Sunday tilt, the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Francisco 49ers, and unfortunately from a host battle, some disappointing news for Andy. Quick note on JJ McCarthy. We're going to get into this deeper next week. We'll talk a little bit more, get a little bit of the draft, kind of previews once we get past this big game. But just as a heads up, it seems like, Andy, there's been the confirmation that the way the fans of the NFL perceive McCarthy versus the way the internal scouts of the NFL view him is starting to shift his narrative to being maybe not definitely a 1st-round pick, but someone that teams would come into the 1st round to get. His stock, the combine, looks like he could be really rising here. And that's interesting for the Giants, I think, for you and me, because we always kind of viewed this back end of the 1st round as a tantalizing spot for the Giants to go get their next quarterback.
And there's been a little bit of smoke just across the landscape with JJ McCarthy. You mentioned coming back in the 1st round. Most people now are mocking him in the top 15 picks of the NFL draft based on what they're hearing from other teams. CBS Sports had him mocked number 11 to the Vikings. There's a whole host of people that have him even going into the top 10 at this point. They're basically saying that his skill and his attributes.
Is this hype machine, or is this real? Right? Is this
Well, that's a great question. People are saying, look at Michael Penix's injuries and issues that he has that makes him fall to a day 2, day 3 pick. Bo Nix was relatively inconsistent at Auburn, but looked good at Oregon. He looks like a more of a day 2, day 3 pick. And JJ McCarthy is rising up the draft boards and could be drafted in the top 10. I don't know, Adam. Anytime I hear these types of things, it makes me cringe. Like, he hasn't thrown a football since everyone said he was something before, and now he's significantly better. And people are just saying, well, people in the NFL know what's up. And it's like, well, no one said anything about this beforehand. Like, why are
Yeah.
we only hearing about it now? Is everyone really that bored? To me, anytime someone rises like 30 picks and hasn't thrown a football, like that to me is a red flag immediately.
We'll get into this more next week, but yeah, a QB stock rising being based on other QBs falling is not the one-to-one that you
No.
want, right? You want it to be, we love this guy so much, not some of the other quarterbacks between injuries and stuff. Do we really want to take them? That feels fraught with potential peril, but we'll see how it plays out, and we'll talk a little bit more draft strategy next week. Now, Andy, here's the bad news for you. You can't beat me. My lead is insurmountable when it comes to the final game of the season. I've got a 6-point lead in our host battle. We can pick honestly. And I know when you honestly pick, you are only going to go one direction here when it comes to the final game.
Well, Adam, it's a good thing that the big game is the Sunday 7-point special is what I think
Oh, is that
I've
is
read
that
around
is
in
that
league
the agreed
circles.
upon?
Is
Yeah,
it's good for a touchdown and an extra point. So like
sure.
maybe there's a way that I sneak back in here. But Adam, we'll do two things here.
Okay,
One, we're going to give our predictions, and then
that's
we're
fine.
going to give one wager for those that like to wager responsibly on something that may be interesting. I have a little nugget that you'll probably be excited to, but I can go first. You
Yeah.
know where I'm going because I've been saying it all playoffs. The one thing I cannot do is bet against Patrick Mahomes. The current line is the Kansas City Chiefs getting 2.5, and obviously the 49ers giving 2.5.
That's right.
I just can't find a world where I would take any hard-earned dollars and put them and say, I actively think that Patrick Mahomes is going to lose this game. Like, it just doesn't even compute to me. After you look at how he's been able to just say, I will find a way to win against the Buffalo Bills. I will find a way to win against the Ravens. I will not turn the ball over. I will play responsibly. For me, this feels like Kansas City is going to come out on top. And honestly, like, isn't it just made for TV for Travis Kelce to have 11 catches for 110 yards, 2 touchdowns, Super Bowl MVP,
Mhm.
proposal to Taylor Swift
Stop
while
it. Please
accepting
stop.
everything? Like,
Stop.
it's already written. We talk about the NFL script is already written.
Stop.
Adam, that's just too perfect to pass up for me.
Stop it right now. Knock it off with this nonsense. That, you know what? It wouldn't even be as bad as when Peyton Manning finished winning the Super Bowl with the Broncos and was like, just gonna kick back and have a couple of BL smooths. Am I right, boys? It was like, okay, this guy is officially into retirement and endorsement deals. It is hard, dude, right? Like, so I get the luxury, because there is no 7-point play here, that I get the luxury of being able to pick the 49ers if I want to. It is hard, man. Like, when you think about this, people talked about during the week, when you look at the line and you look about the end of the season, the path through the playoffs for both of these teams, who they went up against, it's like everything indicates that Kansas City should be on paper the favored team here. And it's actually led to a lot of speculation. Like, Vegas is like, yeah, maybe it really should be, Kansas City minus X amount of points. So there's this whole teasing process that they're going through here to try to make it so enticing to bet money on the 49ers, right? To feel like we're trying to convince you mentally that they're actually a stronger team than perceived. So some mind games getting played there. I can take Brock Purdy. This is a fascinating one too, right? Like, Golden Boy Patrick Mahomes here's why I root for Patrick Mahomes, because I want Tom Brady not to be the GOAT anymore. And if Mahomes wins this, he's not there yet fully, but he's one more away, like, just to be in that full conversation. Then you get into who's the better pure quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, from a talent level, right? Just from an athleticism and all those things. So I like the idea of that. I like Tom Brady as he's about to launch his playoff commentary, NFL commentary career. I want him to walk in that booth and have to acknowledge that he is not the GOAT of the NFL QB room. So there's that part of it too. You're going with, on what is a 47.5 over under in this game coming in. You're going to be going with them. You feel bullish about the idea that the Chiefs win this thing outright. What do you have as your final score for this one, if you were giving a game prediction, before we give our bets?
Yeah, I think the final score is 24-20 Kansas City Chiefs. I think that they get enough points to be able to win, and they kind of put the onus on Brock Purdy to say, can you go win a game against one of the best defenses in the NFL?
Sure.
And I have seen Patrick Mahomes do it many times. What I have seen is the San Francisco 49ers fall behind, and frantically have to come back as the favored team, more talented team in 2 games. I don't know if you can fall that far behind this Kansas City defense, knowing that you have Patrick Mahomes on the other side who can guide the team to victory. So give me the Kansas City Chiefs 24-20 in a lower scoring game than I think what more people will realize.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it low and slow too. I'll flip the script. I'll go ahead and give me. Let's do 23-17. The San Francisco 49ers feel like their defense is being a little bit underrated because the Kansas City Chiefs have kind of flipped how their team is constructed and what carries them forward. So give me those 49ers. We understand. I get to have a little bit of fun here. Now let's talk bets. What do you have your very clean cut, easy, everybody have a good time before we get dangerous?
Yeah, so I have one very simple one that I think is very very easy. Everyone can wrap their head around it. Not very difficult. Will Brock Purdy throw an interception in this game? Yes or no?
Oh,
Obviously, I have the Kansas City Chiefs winning. I think Steve Spagnuolo, every Giant fan knows Steve Spagnuolo. We know how creative his blitz scheme can be. We see what he did to Lamar Jackson. You see how he was able to hold Josh Allen. You see what they did to the Miami Dolphins, in that cold weather game. It's for him to throw an interception is minus 135. I feel
mhm.
like at some point the pressure is going to get to him in Brock Purdy in the biggest game possible. And you've seen him throw a handful of terrible passes this offseason, and some of them have been dropped. He's been lucky to not have the interceptions happen as frequently as I could. Give me Brock Purdy to throw an interception. It'll happen by the second quarter. You'll feel good about it going into halftime. You'll have money in your pocket to be able to watch Usher at halftime.
Have Usher obviously taking things down. First half total for me. They've got the over under here set at 23.5. So if I'm saying 23-17 is my final score, you could be talking about, listen, is it going to be 14-10? Is it going to be 13-10? Something like that. I might actually take the over in this because I think you'll have a couple of early scores in this game, especially maybe opening drive for each of these teams. We'll talk about that when we get into a little bit of a same game parlay here. It's plus 100. You take the over of 23.5. So I would put that in and feel pretty good about it because I think the second half of this game might actually be where the adjustments come in, Spagnola, right? And you start to see that third quarter become more of a chess match and field position than it is this all-out blitz. What do we have then for your gamble? Give me the big swing here.
Okay, so the sneaky wager, and always wager responsibly if you're going to do it,
You
is
gotta always raise
here's the way I think about it, Adam. So I obviously have the Chiefs winning the game. That means that they're going to have to score some points, right?
That's right.
I don't have them having a massive scoring outburst, but enough to win the game. When I think about the Chiefs going down the field, I look and I say, okay, they have Rashee Rice on the outside, they have Travis Kelsey. As they get into the red zone, the Chiefs have had a difficult time scoring over the last 8 weeks. Converting touchdowns instead of field goals.
Mm-hmm.
But when they get into the red zone, everyone knows that they're looking for Travis Kelsey. Everyone knows that he's probably going to be doubled with Fred Warner and whoever else inside. They're going to leave single coverage with whatever wide receivers are out there. So I am going the next level on this one.
Here we go.
And I am saying that tight end Noah Gray is going to be in
Oh,
there
okay.
in a pass blocking situation. And all of a sudden, he'll just kind of turn around and be ready for that 3 or 4 yard touchdown grab from Patrick Mahomes. Right now, Noah Gray to score a touchdown is 9-1. Him to
Mhm.
score the first touchdown of the game, where you could see Andy Reid getting sneaky and tricky, is 47-1. You
Come
get
on now.
almost 50-1 on a tight end on the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not Travis Kelsey, but it is Noah Gray, my friend. So that is my pick. If you wanna be a little conservative, just have him score a touchdown. If you want to get a little crazy with it, I say first touchdown scorer Noah Gray for the Chiefs. Tell me you love it.
Tell you I love it. I don't hate it at all, man, because you have to have these moments. I thought you were just going to go, maybe Rashee Rice. You talk about other players that are going to be able to, maybe it's Pacheco that catches that touchdown. But I like that you go the layer deeper into the tight end room and say, no, 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 it's the forgotten man. Now, for me, I root for you to be successful. I root for fans to be successful, but I don't hate the idea of like an eligible offensive lineman getting mentioned before that play. And then you kind of seeing Noah Gray make the key block that frees up the sixth offensive lineman, and as he goes out into the flat and catches a touchdown. That feels fun to me because then I get to poke you in the ribs and a couple of texts and have a good time. For me personally now, I said 23-17, which means that would be the under on this game. So let's go ahead. Let's just have a little bit of fun, guys. You walk in there and you take the under on the 47.5. Then you go with a couple of easy ones. Christian McCaffrey? Guy making his way to the big dance? Yeah, anytime touchdown score, put it on the board. You said Travis Kelce maybe he's double, triple covered in the red zone. That doesn't stop him from having a 35-yard touchdown pass from Mahomes outside of the red zone. Give me that as well. And then the sneaky one here. We saw some legs from Brock Purdy going over the course of these playoffs. Alternate rushing line plus 25 yards. That's just a couple of scampers for the young man. And you're going to put yourself into a four-leg parlay, That's like a donkey. And you go ahead and get plus 52.88 on your money. That's how I dance, Andy. $10. Grab yourself over $500. That's me. That's my journey.
As we said, bet responsibly. Adam, I do like the idea of the Brock.
By betting responsibly, maybe don't trust my parlay. I don't know.
Well, I do like the Brock Purdy piece. I just wanted to make a note that in the playoffs, in his 2 playoff games, he's had 5 rushes and 6 rushes respectively, which is the most in any games that he had this season. So clearly they've added this dynamic during the postseason.
Yeah.
It could be because they were playing from behind, but he's clearly had to use his legs more often than he did in the regular season. I think that's a great chance to continue. I think it's 10.5 is his current line on rushing. That, like you said, that's 1 or 2 rushes to be able to get there anyway. I like the idea of what you're working with. And man, I think we both gave the listeners a chance to hit it big on the big game on Sunday.
Dude, come on, man. Whatever you're doing, however you're spending it, we know. Get yourself some wings and things. Have a couple of beverages, adult or otherwise. Maybe it's just a nice, fruit cocktail that you're really enjoying. However you get down, man. Have fun with it. This is the official end of the NFL season. So have a blast on Sunday. Maybe make a couple of shekels responsibly, as Andy says. And we remind you, of course, as we part ways today, that today's episode and all of our episodes are brought to you by Potential as well. Why? Because Potential is something that the losing side of this game may need to invest in. You know that it's an interesting free online assessment tool that sets benchmarks and tracks your well-being and also gives you coaching to improve it, tracks your progress over time. And as I say, 100% free for individual users. Check out PIETENTIAL.com. That's highly recommended if you are a Chiefs fan or a 49ers fan and you find yourself on the losing side of things. Then next week, buddy, on YouTube, on the podcast feed, One Giant Podcast, on Twitter, at AndyMac214, at Adam Armick, at One Giant Podcast, we turn the page. This is the end of the season. So then we get into free agency. We have to go through the entire roster for the New York Football Giants, talk about where the cap room is, all of the big decisions. So enjoy this last moment because now we get down in the mud starting next week. Until next time, though, as Andrew Makowitz would want, need, nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.